Hey guys, this episode of the Smoking Tire Podcast is brought to you by Dylan Optics sunglasses. You know those awesome glasses you see me wearing in every video, the ones with the cool matte finish? Those are called Dylan Optics. They come in men's. They now come in women's sizes as well. They come in metal frames and plastic frames. And the NIR polarized lenses that come in Dylan Optics with their distinctive matte finish look the business. And more importantly, they keep my eyes from just drying out and dying while I'm shooting out all day in the mountains or in the desert. Go to thesmokingtire.com and click on that Dylan banner under the Partners tab. If you buy a pair of Dylan Optics, any pair of Dylan Optics, I'll send you a Smoking Tire t-shirt on the house. Buy 2 pairs of Dylan Optics, you get 2 t-shirts. It's that easy, folks. Just go to thesmokingtire.com, click on the Partners tab and Dylan Optics, and I'll get you a t-shirt for supporting the people who support the Smoking Tire. Before we made this show, I drank a cup of Beeline coffee. Not just any Beeline coffee, it's the Smoking Tire roast. I got my own roast, people. We started making this coffee. They started sending me samples. I started liking the shit, and they're like, it's time to get your own roast. So I want you guys to try it. It's absolutely delicious. It's a medium roast, light body, and it's so good. I drink it every day, multiple times a day. Use code TST at checkout and get 15% off anything at Beeline Coffee, big or small. Code TST at BeelineCoffee.com. Zachary Clapman, is your mic active? Mic 4? Zach Clapman, are you there? Are you there, Zach Clapman?
Yes.
Zach Clapman's taking over One Takes.
Oh, yeah.
He's booking dates. Email thesmokingtire@gmail.com and put Zach and your make and model of your vehicle in the subject line. Repeat. Email thesmokingtire.com and put the word Zach and then the make and model of your vehicle in the subject line. If you would like to do a one take with Zach, what do you have to add to that, Zach?
Just reiterating that Matt may not be there. And
I may be there.
You can't learn his address.
I won't be there. You probably won't hang out with me, but Zach's awesome. And you will have a video of your car.
People have sent in some cool stuff, and I am super stoked to drive all of them.
We start filming them this week and airing them next week. So that's coming very soon. Lastly, I have a podcast with Cameron Weiss, the master watchmaker. It's about watches. It's called Watch and Listen. There's a video. You can get it on youtube.com/watch and listen podcast. There's also audio. You can get on iTunes and Shout Engine. And it's a good show. It's topical. It's not like this wandery mess we call a podcast over here, The Smoking Tire. Every show is about a new topic. They're about an hour long. We have guests. We talk about all different angles of watches. And yes, watches do have something to do with cars, which, let's see, this episode goes up Tuesday. Tomorrow, Wednesday, Spike Ferriston is on Watch and Listen, and we spend an hour and 20 minutes with Spike going over the connection, explicit connection between watches and cars. YouTube.com/watch and listen podcast. Also search for it on iTunes or whatever Android device you use to download podcasts. All right, now this episode is going to be really fun. We got these 2 guys from a company down in Orange County called Unicus Cars. And what Unicus Cars is, they build concept cars and one-off supercars for the super rich. And before you think these guys are total cracks and kooks, they have spent entire careers building concept cars for OEMs. And they have a long background in it. We talk about it. It's a great show. Stick around. Enjoy this episode of The Smoking Tire. Assholes.
Speeding assholes.
Speeding asshole. How many assholes do we have on this ship?
Yeah.
Yo-ho, Lord Helmet. Okay, here we go. Let's do a fucking show. It's the Smoking Tire Podcast. Hello. I hope everyone is having a wonderful morning. This is going to be a fun show. I will tell you in a second how I met this gentleman, and it was very, very bizarre, but I want to welcome Darren Schurig and Nate Schroeder to the show. Thank you very much, boys. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting us.
Unicus Cars.
Yes, sir.
And I have to start off with an apology. A miscommunication led to these guys driving all the way up here from Orange County and us not being able to do a show a couple weeks ago. After we got ghosted there was the confirmations and the double confirmations and the lack of confirmations in this city can be a problem.
Matt, I completely appreciate and respect that on every level.
I
Thank you very
apologize
much
for the role I played in the
listen,
ghosting.
And I had it as well. I definitely did not confirm, but being what it is,
boy.
I'm happy to comply and be here again. So thank you for having us back.
The second time is the charm and not the third. So what's up, boys? You guys do some crazy shit. I was down at Eurocar, which is like a high-end secondhand store down in Orange County. I was returning my borrowed Lotus press car, and here are these guys walking in with this crate that looks like the fucking Ark of the Covenant crate from Indiana Jones, and they pop the top, and it is this model, and I overhear what sounds like you guys trying to sell someone the real car of this. And I'm like, hang on a minute.
Your ears did not deceive you,
What
Matt.
is happening here? So what is it that you guys do?
Well, so that's a super a great place to start the conversation because what we do is and what we have been doing for many decades really is all kinds of amazing stuff here in Southern California to develop one-off real life automobiles.
Concept cars, if you will.
Concept cars. We absolutely, both Nate and I are from the concept car industry and from about 10 other industries. We've been around the world on a lot of different aspects of the industry. But really where we met and sort of began to collaborate and realize and recognize the opportunity was when we were working for a concept car builder in Fountain Valley. Am I allowed to say the name?
Not, of course.
Okay, it's Metal Crafters, a very well-known company here in Southern California. Really the company that invented concept car building here in Southern California.
Invented concept car building. So how long are we talking about? Because I think the first concept car is like Buick Y-Job, right? Is the first concept car Harley Earl?
Earl. So going back to the 50s, there were a lot of magnificent concept cars.
Motorama.
And even into the 60s. Motorama.
Firebirds.
Absolutely. All these wild-looking turbine cars and things with bubble tops and all that amazing stuff.
I was just at Leno's house, his garage for taping real quick. And humble brag, Leno's, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You know, he can start everything. He walked up with the Chrysler turbine car. Hey, guy, hey, look at this. It's a turbine car. I'm like, do you ever drive this thing? Yeah, fucking start it right now. And he goes up, and I've never heard a car.
Don't be careful what you ask for when you're in Jay's garage.
You ever hear one of them things run? A turbine car?
I've been to his garage and heard that car run.
It's unbelievable.
It is amazing.
So you press a button and it's on. It just 0 to on.
Yeah.
There's no cranking. It just like you turned on a shaver.
You're right.
It's craziness.
Those are wild automobiles. That's the great thing about Jay is all of his vehicles run and he drives them.
Yeah.
He knows how to operate them.
Yeah.
Very different kind of collector in the world.
So back to Metal Crafters.
Yeah, so Metal Crafters started in the late 80s, actually, and they came out, and there's a really great story here that might be of value here to the podcast, but you cut me off when you think you've heard enough.
Oh, don't put that pressure on me. That's fucked up.
At the time, Chrysler was going through one of its first of many financial crashes, bankruptcies, actually pulling themselves out of bankruptcy. And at the helm was a gentleman named Lee Iacocca, who was very well established in the industry, and he came on board to really rebrand Chrysler and put them back on the map as a legitimate automotive company.
What year are we talking about right now?
So
Give
this
or take?
This is in the 80s,
Okay.
mid-80s. Yep. So they had made, and there's a backstory even behind that, but because I grew up during this mess, I kind of, you guys are a little more fortunate because I think automobiles are back in a super exciting way, and they have been for a while. But in the 70s and early 80s, automobiles were scary. They were horrible. Yeah. They were like the worst appliances on the planet. They were
like
rattle traps and
60s engineering cheapened.
How do we decontent this, by committee so that we can make, and it ultimately led to something like the Pontiac Aztec, which was so horrible. Nobody could believe it actually escaped the barn. How did it get out? So in that mix, actually, there were a few visionaries that really created this opportunity and what we're actually living with today, which is that automobiles are back, right? The passion's there, the designs are amazing, the performance is back, and I'm going to go ahead on record and just at risk and say that the first Dodge Viper was the car that turned that corner for us.
The concept from '89.
The concept from '89, and that vehicle was built by Metal Crafters.
Okay.
So Lee Iacocca brought that out to the West Coast. He kind of He took some heat from the unions in Detroit and all of that, but he knew that car needed to happen fast, and it needed to happen exactly the way it needed to happen.
Grab a picture of that concept, Tim.
Yeah,
Viper concept.
the Viper, the
Speedster
original
windshield.
Speedster windshield.
Yeah. Real fuck
big,
you
giant,
kinda concept.
muscular.
Yep.
Total.
Yeah.
That's exactly
There
what it
it
was.
is. That's
So
definitely it.
if you look at that car compared to what was on the market at the time,
Yeah.
that was a statement that absolutely just got all of us going again. Like
And
it
by
woke
the
us
way,
all up.
not so different from the other than an A-pillar and a windshield frame. There's really no difference.
Now, I will
between-
tell you, the gentleman sitting across from me here, Nate, owns that Generation 1 Viper,
Do
and it
you?
looks
Yeah, Gen
like
1.
that.
Oh man, tell
Gen 2
me
as well,
all
but-
about. Are you a Viper guy?
There's a few other things in the mix, but I was
The quiet man over here is
Yeah.
secretly the more interesting.
We'll get
guy.
him going. We'll get him going once he comes out of
So
his
is
this
it
was a huge
shell.
because is it
Yeah, this is a
because
big
of this
deal.
story that you own these cars?
Yeah, a little bit. It's something that I think is amazing place in automotive history, and a red Gen 1 Viper just screams this sort of resurrection
Yeah.
here in the States. And I actually spent a little time in the very early part of my career working for Chrysler, and had the chance to go to the Viper plant when it was brand new. Came out of high school in '92, was in college, went up to the Viper plant. My neighbor was the delivery manager when you could get a factory delivery.
Yeah.
So that was pretty impactful on me.
Yeah.
And then I ended up crossing paths with Darren years later at Metal Crafters, where this concept car was created, and here we are today.
Where's that concept car now? You know, do they have
Very
does Chrysler have it
super
somewhere?
great story. They
Yeah.
do, and actually, it's a great and a sad story in a way, because Chrysler built so many amazing concept cars, and if you're familiar with some of them,
Some true, real good ones.
some
The
really-
Atlantic Coupe. Anyone?
Right?
ME 412. Anyone?
that's when we were at that company. So and by the way, those cars run. Those are real automobiles. They're not
ME 412
pushers.
had
They're
what,
not.
4 turbos in it or some
Yeah,
shit?
yeah. That's
Yeah,
where the
quad
name
turbo,
came from.
yeah.
Quad
Dude,
turbo, 12
wait, so
cylinder.
did you guys worked on that car?
Yeah, absolutely.
What is that about?
So that's a pre-preg carbon fiber
ME-412.
Yeah. Yep. And you'll see the pictures.
Oh, and
of
there's
it.
the Chrysler Atlantic Coupe, which was so dope.
You can't even. I mean, and this is where we came from.
there
This
it
is
is.
so there it is. So that
this
vehicle,
is
by
the
the way, by many standards, that's still contemporary sports car on every
the
level.
fucking ME-412 looks hot.
Yeah.
It looks pretty. I mean, there's a little bit of aging here and
Little
there
bit,
in
little
front of
bit.
the rear wheels, but overall, still looks pretty hot.
Considering when it was done in 2004, that
And
car
that's
is
a real
15 years
runner.
old.
Yeah, real driving car.
You can also find a video right now of that car on the track at Willow Springs.
Oh, really?
There are several videos
Like
online.
driving at an actual pace.
Yes.
Car.
Wow.
That was built to run.
I forget what was the ethos of that car at the time.
So a little bit of that is Daimler had purchased Chrysler, which was kind of like the weirdest marriage of all time, and we lived a little bit through that.
Yeah.
But because that's a Daimler engine, Daimler was looking for ways to continue to push Chrysler forward. And just as a kind of a funny little story, I mean, Chrysler, you know, they were having their challenges, and they had been in and out of kind of bankruptcy and insolvency. And Daimler bought the company and went into the tech center in Michigan and kind of looked around and said, like, oh, we've already done that. Oh, that's no good, and we don't need that, and kind of like, you know.
How about you take our old E-Class and build 2 decades worth of cars on that?
Yeah.
And they're still doing that shit.
Still making profit off of that car.
Dodge Demon, anybody?
There you go. Exactly.
$80,000.
Yeah, no doubt. But there were others along the way, and the idea was they were trying to synthesize their parts bins and kind of come up with a way to re-strategize the Chrysler brand based on Mercedes parts, and it was going to be this great marriage, and it was a disaster.
Mercedes was supposed to bring Chrysler up, and instead Chrysler ended up cheapening Mercedes. It did not work out.
It did not work out. And needless to say, they shed the company some years thereafter.
So wasn't the ME-412 was supposed to be, okay, we're going to take the S600 motor and then the SRT like craziness and put them together.
Yep.
with
It was
that.
there was a lot of technology sort of exploration going on at that time.
Yeah.
The Prowler, right? Regardless of what you think of it,
the Prowler.
that was an all
Believe they
aluminum,
sold that?
chassis. That was an an engineering exercise.
It really was.
And the ME-412 was an engineering exercise and pushing the envelope on all fronts.
It's so You cannot believe they were dumb enough to build the fucking Prowler without a V8. Can you believe? I mean, even as I was a kid, and I was like, "What are you doing?" Like,
how is that even possible?
Who
How
the
did that
fuck thought-
happen?
Because it was so cool looking.
Yeah, and especially on the heels of the Viper. I mean, I
Yeah.
think anybody at Chrysler would agree that was.
Nate. Everyone check. It's not. Hey, look, it's not me. Hands off. Check your goddamn phones, people. Can you believe they went through the trouble to get that design road certified and
Yeah.
not just figure it out?
Yeah.
It doesn't fit. Shut up. Figure it out. What are you doing?
Yeah, it seems like a fairly easy repackage. We've seen people. Numerous.
Don't people do it?
Yeah, there's people that
Yeah.
have shoehorned a Hemi in there.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of surgery, but it's like, okay, that extra couple inches you needed,
Yeah,
why
yeah.
wasn't that on the front end?
Yeah, like it wouldn't have drastically changed the architecture of the car in any way. What a fucking
could have made it work,
sad,
but-
sad car.
But that's an example of what came out of the '80s, man. I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Well,
is that-
retro future, right?
Well, they were kind of mired in the middle of this transition between the bean counters and people that want a strong fuel economy because we got spanked in the gas crisis, and the all the manufacturers from overseas were coming with models that were cleaning our clock, and so wow, we can't have this. This is like, it's irresponsible for us to put a V8 in this vehicle. I mean, look where we are today.
Yeah.
But all of that's hindsight.
Irresponsible.
Right.
I have an idea. How about a 700 horsepower Jeep?
Sounds good.
It does. Yeah, build that.
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. We can take it to the snow,
Margins
get groceries,
through the
and
roof.
got a 10-second quarter mile.
Well,
So-
it's interesting. Like, okay, so the way that Chrysler attempted the PT Cruiser thing, and it kind of well, not the PT Cruiser thing. Yeah, the PT Cruiser, and then they went to that sort of Art Deco-y thing for a minute, right?
They did. So they were looking to pull a little bit of the Chrysler heritage into some of that stuff, because some of those designs, even like the Atlantique, right? It was based on a previous design.
Tim, the picture Chrysler Atlantic concept, and it was an almost flagrant Bugatti Atlantic coupe, but it was the kind of car.
But
there it is. There
updated,
it
but
is.
updated. I
Row
mean,
number 2 on the left.
Yep.
Look, I mean, fuck me, is that awesome?
That is still a vehicle, and by the way, that is part of the backstory of our company,
That is
Unicus.
so hot looking.
We were with the company that made that, and
Were
that's
you
a real
really? Is
running
that Metal
automobile. That's
Crafters?
Metal Crafters again, and that was where design reigned king. This is so you got to give a lot of credit to a gentleman named Tom Gale, who was the head of design at Chrysler at the time, and he really insisted that he was going to put design ahead of. He was going to put. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
He was going to put
Everyone
design.
else hears it too.
He was going to put design ahead of the bean counters, really, and build vehicles around great design, and that's what you saw come out of that era with Tom Gale. He had designers that were steeped in this kind of history with these vehicles, and he brought a lot of that design forward and really did an amazing job with it. And there's a great story about the Charger that we might touch on later as well, because the original Charger concept car was done under Tom Gale as well.
You're talking about original of the modern,
Charger.
original.
Yep. And
is that the concept? It looks like
Look
a
at
Chrysler museum.
Oh
I
my
guess.
gosh! So that I was going to say, you asked where the original Viper was.
That's probably where it is.
Chrysler has all those vehicles
Yeah.
in storage now. Unfortunately, Fiat closed down. They used to actually have a museum on campus.
Well, they
that
said
was
the
open
Viper
to the public.
plant. I just saw a story. The Viper plant is going to be a museum.
Yeah, they're going to move everything
Yeah,
over that. So it's
that
good
could
to
be
see.
pretty
It's-
awesome, actually.
Yep, it's going to
Good
be
use
meeting
of
and
that.
conference space, and
Yeah.
have a lot of cars there.
But so wait, so when you're at Metal Crafters, okay, it's like, all right, that looks like by my house. They're like, all right, we're gonna build a concept car. It's gonna look, like a clear homage to the Bugatti Atlantic.
Yep.
And here's a sketch. Okay, so now you're at the company. Do you take a vehicle and remove the body from it to build that, or is that a ladder frame kind of thing underneath, or what? How do you build something like that?
A little bit of that and everything else, really. So at the time, a lot of those cars were built over the top of what we call donor cars, which
Right.
were existing chassis and platforms. They tended to have an upgraded engine and suspension of some sort, but the basic geometry came from an existing chassis.
So is that a Prowler under there? I mean, honestly, I can if I squint.
Yeah. So I can't tell you where
No,
all
really.
of them came from, but I'll tell you this.
Don't bullshit me here, Darren.
Some of them literally came from there was a small car called a Dodge Neon, and we would cut up a Dodge Neon
Oh.
and stretch it and
Well,
move it
there you go.
around and do all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. that we could put an amazing body on top of a Dodge Neon. That happens.
Because it's a skateboard, right?
It's
when
a
you
skate-
remove the
yeah,
body.
Absolutely.
basically.
Absolutely.
That's
So-
very, very funny.
So but that's why the cars were real cars that could run and drive and go on a racetrack, because they
Yeah.
were built on top of existing
Neons. On top of neons. It's the Neon ACR, so you
getting me
know
to
it's
give
the
away.
track provenance.
Yeah. Please forgive me, Tom Gale.
Oh, come on. I understand. I mean, look, we've seen the Preston Tucker movie, right? Where they're bullshitting and pushing this fucking thing up on and making engine sounds like vroom vroom.
That happens. That happens today. I guarantee you, the cars that you see on stage often
they
have
don't
been
move.
pushed. Yeah,
no, they
absolutely.
don't move. I mean,
Right.
but we know that, don't we?
Well, okay, so I'll put one line on that.
in.
I'll let Nate jump in, but that's exactly what Unicus is about. Do we know that? Does the general public know that? And I'll tell you and here's the difference. And I brought another model.
Anytime I assume that they're even the least bit aware,
Yeah.
someone has me question it.
But here's the story. So here's a vehicle that we did in the late 90s, which was an update to the Viper. This was Gen 3, Viper GTSR, absolutely. And we built that as a full pre-preg, true running automobile sitting on top of a Viper chassis, to answer your question, Matt, with a real V10 motor, 500 horsepower, 500 foot-pounds of torque, the whole thing, real running automobile, certified wheels. That car was track ready also. But the thing about it is that car became a toy because the car was real. Like when people
Right.
saw it, there was some. If you can open it, there's an engine inside of there. The doors open, the windows roll down. We made real automobiles in those days. They were real.
Well, that yeah, I would.
That was a concept
that's
car that became a toy.
Coach-built Viper.
Coach-built Viper.
Right, okay, cool,
And,
yeah, yeah.
so real and so absolutely functional that the toy companies made toys of the cars that we made.
Well, that's kind of cool.
They don't do that anymore.
How meta?
They don't meta, right? But they don't do it anymore because everybody kind of knows concept cars are like pushers and just
really?
fakies. And well, I mean that's in the world I live in. They do.
I
Maybe the
think
general public
you might
doesn't.
be too far inside. I don't know.
That's
what do you
probably
think?
true.
What do you think, Nate?
Jump in, Nate.
Yeah,
the
no,
people know
they
it's
still do,
legit?
but I think anytime that the public sees something functional and there's some real track video to back it up, that it's not highly produced 35-mile-an-hour footage, right? And it's 100-mile-an-hour running show cars, that just creates a different impression and creates a different electricity around the prototype or the show car.
Yeah,
It's a level of credibility, right? I mean, suddenly that could be a car that could really come out in production because it's a real car.
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess with the cost of carbon being a little more reasonable now, you can actually make things. I mean, it's still expensive, but like it's not 10 years ago, 12 years ago expensive.
Right.
So, okay, so you guys, you working at Metal Crafters, you're building concept cars under the direction of OEM designs and whatnot.
Correct.
Yep.
And at what point do you go, hang on a minute? What's the next move?
So
Where does it go?
relatively recently, actually, I mean, it was about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, that really, and just to go into my own backstory, I can tell you, growing up as a kid, there were a couple of really great moments in my life, and one of them was the very first time I walked into an OEM design studio. I mean, it's just
Whose studio?
It was Chrysler at the time. And the hair stood up on my arms, and the smell of the clay and the lighting and the sketches and everything that was happening there was just the purest, like the internal workings of how automobiles start life.
Yeah. Magic happening there.
Magic happening.
The clay to me has always stood out as being the most special. I don't know what it is about the clay.
Yeah.
that-
There's just artwork happening, being created.
You're
It's artwork.
literally molding it,
Yep.
like more
By
so
hand.
than even driving it. Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
And-
Professional degree, people with professional degrees in art, sculpting
Yeah.
clay. It's quite fantastic.
When you
Yeah.
see your first real OEM clay model at the level of detail and the level of balance and perfection that those artists can make that clay model by hand. Now we've
Are they
integrated some
laser
technology.
cutting clay now, or anything like that, or is it all hand cut still?
It's a mix. It's a mix.
Yep, it's a balance of sculpture and then scanning it, digitizing it, and then trying to make sure that you have a balanced clay model. That if you're working on a left fender and you get it to look exactly the way you like, let's reproduce that with reverse geometry on the other side of the car.
Which Harley Earl could not do, right? He had to balance the other side by hand, right? So those cars were not perfectly symmetrical, but they were very good.
Right, and also like no Ferraris before 1971 were symmetrical either.
Right.
Like, that shit
Probably
don't fit.
later than that.
Yeah, or any DeLorean.
Or any DeLorean ever. Exactly right. Yeah. That's funny and true at the same time. But even amazingly enough, with all the technology we have for laser scanning and CNC cutting clay and all those things are in the mix, most automobiles today, like LaFerrari, if you look up LaFerrari clay model, you'll see 14 different versions of that clay model that happened before that car came to life, done by a clay artist. And a designer, with sketching and stuff. So that still really happens. So walking in on that, just to kind of circle back to that impetus, that was just, I remember that moment like it was yesterday. And really the idea is from there on in our lives, Nate and I and the rest of our team have been continuing to work into that environment. It's a very confidential environment. The public does not get to see that. Mm-hmm. That happens in complete darkness behind the curtain, and it isn't until the cars come out with some. There's been a production thumbs up given, and then there's pre-production vehicles and some leaks to the press. And some of it's strategic, but then it finally comes out.
Someone tells Brenda Pretty where they're going to be in the desert.
Exactly right. And then
what color zebra we're going to use this time.
Yep, absolutely. A couple of long lens photographs later, and this car's coming out production. So
the hype machine starts going, and
So we were privy to those kinds of designs 4 to 5 years before they came out in production.
Right.
So it was super exciting to see. We were looking into the future.
Yeah, inside knowledge is a very addictive drug, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. I don't, if you're working for...
I've seen, I know what this is going to be. Fuck.
I'm
Where
sure
this is going.
Tim Cook has the same issue at Apple, right? Because those guys are working 3 or 4 years in the future, and that's an exciting place to be.
And people bitch at him about their phones. He's like, God damn it, I've solved this.
That's
solved
done.
this 6 months ago. Fuck. Can't tell you, but I have.
In a word, the idea was to be able to provide that experience and that look behind the curtain to a private party. Okay. That's what Unicus is.
Yeah, and so the simple of that is, the pitch I basically heard you do at Eurocar is, too many people have LaFerraris. You don't need to be like those people.
Right.
You can have... Instead of LaFerrari, it can be La Shurig.
It can be LaFerra.
It can be the LaFerra.
Yeah.
Why have something that 399 other people globally also have?
Yep.
That's for fucking losers and poor people.
Well, absolutely. And there's 917 other guys with a Porsche Spider, right? So same problem.
Only poor people have LaFerraris. And I mean, I overheard that shit and I went, I'm sorry, what? And because I think there are too many rich people already, but that's just me. But and I was like, what the fuck? Really? And you said, yes, really. This is a real thing. And you guys implied that this is not the first go round for you with something like this.
But only for companies at a company level. Right? So we've done all kinds of variations on a theme for modifying existing vehicles, doing bespoke types of tuner cars, right?
Yeah, like what about that stuff like Castriota was doing with that Bertone Mantidae? Remember that shit?
Yep.
Yeah.
Timmy, you remember that with the
Nate knows that story well.
Oh, were you working on that or something?
No, I'm just very familiar with that, and it's similar in some ways in being able to offer that service up to the individual as opposed to just being a corporate thing. And Jason was certainly scratching at it then. I think it was a little bit ahead of its time.
Well, look, I love Jason, but it wasn't exactly pretty, was it?
It was an interesting. It was an interesting vehicle.
He's hit a few home runs. That guy.
Yeah.
It's not that he doesn't have his share of home runs.
He's legit.
Yeah.
You might have noticed in Studio B the P45 pin for which I have on the wall.
That's the next piece of the story, by the way.
Oh, Jimmy G? Is it a Jimmy G tail?
Well, it is in the sense that he's living that life, right? So that man designed his own automobile, and he found a way to make that happen in his lifetime. And that's something that he's kind of like the first guy as a private party to figure out the nuts and bolts of how to do it.
Yeah.
We were already putting
time
together.
On his hands. Can you pull up Tim Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus? or SCG 003.
Yeah,
which,
there you
God
go.
willing, one day I might get to have 5 fucking minutes of seat time.
Yeah.
It looks
Right?
batshit.
I hope
doesn't
you
it?
do.
Give us there.
I'll
go.
be the first
you know,
guy
You know,
watching.
me and Jimmy G are from the same town, Ryan, New York.
True story.
I grew up passing one of my favorite Jimmy G stories is Jim Glickenhaus, for those who don't know, the father of this fucking crazy thing, the SCG 003.
Batshit crazy.
He basically wants to be Enzo Ferrari, and he's finding a way to build race cars and go racing. And God bless him, he knows how to. He knows how to spend it for sure. But he parked a Testarossa, an '85 TR, in our train station parking lot every day, and I would drive by it going to school.
That can leave an impression.
It was his train station car, and I would think just when I thought it was like abandoned, it would be parked in a different spot, Right. And it turns out I didn't know who he was, but it turns out later that was him. And
That's a good
He's
story.
kind of like Batman.
yeah, he put 185K on that Testarossa, and he said he
Oh
had
my
so much
goodness.
rust by the end because he would drive it in the snow and shit that he had to throw it away. He couldn't scrap the car, and his train station car now is a Alfa 8C Competizione.
Makes sense.
Leaves it at the train
Why
station.
not? Why
But he
not?
knows that. He came to my first event when I was doing events in a 1966 Lola T70 that he had installed air conditioning on and a radio, and he drove it into Manhattan.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
The guy, and I was like, "You're fucking out of your mind." He goes,
There's the guy I wanna be
"This
in my
is
next
nothing. I
life."
got 45,000 miles in this car." I was like, "Oh my god!" But so
my idol.
basically,
Yeah.
he took an
for
Enzo,
him.
took the body off it,
Correct.
worked with Pininfarina
Correct.
to design his own thing that I think eventually Ferrari was okay with him putting a badge on, right?
So
They
that
were
was the
not
trick
for
on that
him.
whole story was how did Ferrari go along with that? Because Ferrari obviously has a very specific brand that has a very strong value in this world, and they're very protective of it, to say
Yes.
the least. And
It's a
so the
t-shirt
fact-
company that also sells cars, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they have this artificial cap on the number of vehicles they put out, and they're carefully and very strategically managing their brand. So, so for him to actually get behind that curtain, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, well,
I
you
give
got
him all the credit for that.
how many concept cars did he buy from them? You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like once you own,
Yeah.
Once you're in the club,
Yeah,
It's
he's
a
in
small
the club.
club. Yeah.
It's
it's a small club, and they're
He may be
full
the
of
president.
ballers. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But okay, so you basically offering a Jimmy G service to someone who has the means, but not necessarily the self drive involved in being that guy?
You said
That
it perfectly,
pretty
Matt.
much
It's
it?
a service.
A tailor-made
It's exactly that. A tailor-made. It's a
supercar.
service to experience the entire journey from first sketches, and that's in the video, kind of shows that, from the first sketches of a professional automotive designer to a vehicle that you can park in your driveway, and all the steps of that, to do that professionally, not to do it, in some kind of a tuner exercise or any other kind of a modified. I mean, this is literally starting from a piece of paper, the same way you would design your mansion or your yacht.
Okay, wait. So, this oh wait, can you get rid of that sound? That's Vimeo, so it should be okay. But what we have in front of us here is a model that, there's elements from several different supercars I see incorporated into it. It looks like the kind of thing a CAD, a CFD optimized drawing would spit out. Are you trying to sell someone this thing, or are you trying to sell someone, hey guys, you could help design your own thing kind of like this, but built from to suit?
Yeah, I think
Nate?
it could be both. Certainly, you never know when a quarter scale model or a sketch and somebody says, "I want that," right?
Yeah.
That's the whole emotional experience of car buying. But if someone says, "You know what? If they can do that, I had an idea for this," and this is what we could potentially take them through that whole process from start to
Right.
finish and give them an experience. As Darren said, it's not the tuner experience, but is this really next
it's-
level OEM experience.
It's like Total Recall, except you're doing an Enzo Ferrari fantasy, pretty
yes,
much, right?
that you can
Right.
drive home at the end of the
That
day.
you can, and so you're offering a running, driving, performing concept car.
100%
That's correct.
made for the
so
street. Made for the
fucking
street.
crazy.
Yeah, something that isn't so fragile that it takes 10 people to move it around. Something that, with a little bit of care, you're able to treat it like any other high-end car that you would have in your collection.
So, do you then disassemble an existing hypercar and rebody it? What are you making a carbon tub for this, or is it a tube frame scenario? Like, how does it work?
So all of the above, it really depends on the design. I mean, it comes down to what are the requirements to achieve the design? How do you actually, in the same way that we did 20 years ago in Metal Crafters, and the reason I bring that up is because we did this 20 years ago already for the OEMs.
Right.
And what went into the chassis and the drivetrain and everything about the controls was all driven by the design. What does it need to be? What does it need to do? And you start there, and that could literally be, by the way, it's sitting on top of a McLaren 720S.
Right,
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of the overall budget for what this project will be and can be, that's kind of like a really great cost savings is to start with an existing
car.
Absolutely, because modern day chassis are so good, right?
Well, yeah, and you see these guys in it. You know, there's that new Lancia Stratos thing that was based on a Scuderia, and there's the whatever the fuck Eric Clapton has built over there.
There's another guy, right?
Yeah, he gets them from Ferrari, right?
Totally.
What's the division called?
A lot of folks are starting their sort of specialty operations business.
Specialty, yeah.
Right. There's a number of different special some things, but
bespoke this and special operations that,
and certainly a lot of those organizations are fantastic, producing some interesting things, and some that
Rolls Royce did that interesting
perfect example.
thing.
That is absolutely the classic example.
10 million, I think it was.
I heard it's as high as 13 or something.
Yeah, it might have been more,
but it sounds north of 10 in some way.
A lot.
It's a lot.
But that's a perfect example, and those specialty operations are doing a fantastic job. But what if someone wants something from a design perspective that doesn't fit the ethos of that brand?
Well, and also, like with Ferrari, so when Ferrari built the weird, can you, Tim, get Eric Clapton's Ferrari?
By the way, there's the Rolls Royce swept tail right there.
The Rolls Royce swept tail in that picture is gorgeous. In other pictures is hideous.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in person. But
you've not seen it in person? It's from the right angle, it's okay, but it's from the other angles, it's
yeah. Well, there you go. That one that's a little funky for me right there. It looks a little bit like a camper shell on the back of a Phantom. I mean,
it looks like a transom of a Riva or something.
Right.
But so with Eric
automotive
Clapton's
design is not easy.
No, and with the special Ferraris, they have to use the standard glass, and the standard. So there are certain things you can change and certain things you can't. And as I'm sure you guys know, the proportions change. There you go. So there's that, which isn't as ugly as it could be. But when you're trying to take a Ferrari 458 and turn it into a Berlinetta Boxer homage, it looks a little wonky.
Well, you hit absolutely. Here's absolutely the magic sauce to this whole thing, Matt, and you just said it. And we didn't talk about this before, so you're not a paid representative of the company, but we make our own glass.
I'm sorry.
So we are not. This is the thing. There are a handful of companies on planet Earth that can do it, and that's almost everybody is stuck. They're committed and bound by an existing greenhouse.
Yeah.
And I can tell you because I did it in the '80s when I was building cars for customers, and it was like, okay, Corvette windshield. Like that's all there was. We're starting with a Corvette windshield. How do we make something off of this Corvette windshield?
What cars that I wouldn't have thought of would have used the Corvette windshield? Can you let me know? I'm just curious.
It was all one-off stuff that I did even back in the day. I actually, truth be told, there's a really great gentleman named John Foggy who lives in San Francisco, and I did this exact process for him in 1989.
A from scratch type of car?
Absolutely. He brought me a funny thing called an Italia, which was a car that was intended to be a GT to compete with Ferrari at the time, and so but they were built in kind of limited numbers, but they never became valuable.
Okay.
He was collecting it. So at some point he said, let's cut this up. I don't want this car to look like this anymore. And we completely went around the car and custom made every single piece of the car to his vision out of metal, around the existing windshield. That was the one piece of the car we could not,
you go, man, this is really almost there, isn't it?
Almost there, boy, just except for that one thing. But you hit it on the head. It bounds the proportions of the car in a certain way that's really very inexorable. Our company has glass manufacturing capability. One of the things that we do is provide glass to the concept car industry.
Well,
so we can make
isn't it?
Literally this glass canopy that's sitting in front of you or any other shape that we need to support this Unicus kind of build.
I don't know. How do you make glass? Is it cast? Like sort of? Is it?
I can't say a lot about it because it is proprietary, but I'll say, I can talk about it a little bit. We start with flat sheets of glass. and then we using heat and gravity and special tooling,
really?
we can form them into any kind of
so
shape.
cool.
Now you can go in do them at home in your kitchen.
No, that sounds awesome. Well,
it is super awesome. It's actually a whole other thing that really nobody else. There are very few companies on planet Earth that can do it.
Well, Jimmy
that
G's, his P45 has this glass canopy that I don't know for sure, but I heard was like $500,000.
That's absolutely part of the cost. It's an expensive thing to make a one-off windshield.
Yeah,
and
like Koenigsegg with their wraparound windshields and stuff are
super hard to make, very hard to achieve. The tooling is expensive, the process is expensive. Glass is a really unusual material, and so the process.
Tim, it's a P45 by Pininfarina if you want to get a picture of it. P4/5.
Yeah, there you go.
But so you can make any shape you want.
Any shape.
Now,
Absolutely.
In
the same way that we made the glass for those concept cars.
Is that glass?
No. I'm saying for the full size automobiles like that Viper GTSR.
Yeah, there you go. So look
there
at
it
this.
is.
Here's a pretty real life version of what you guys kind of have here from 2007 or 8, I believe. But that glass canopy is and that's a full glass canopy the whole way back on the car.
I tell you, and this is again where he was able to do some things that you're not going to ever get Porsche or Ferrari or even McLaren to do, because there's some risk there, obviously, in the design and in the execution of that.
Good.
That car's it's
See, I've seen him driving it around.
Phenomenal.
You see him driving it.
Boy, I'm envious. I'm envious. Yeah.
Okay, well, here's a
absolutely
question.
stunning.
So, I know why this model looks like the hypercar shape, right? But what if someone says, you know what, I want a GT, I want a shooting brake, I don't want a hypercar? Is that same process, or kind of a lot more interior to work with and that kind of different goals, right?
Yeah, certainly. So this model is to sort of stoke the imagination, and whether that's in GT format or hypercar format, or even I think another model we have off to the side is a big 4-door saloon
thing is
car.
Fucking cool. Should we grab that? Should we pause and grab that?
You want me to do that? I can swap the models out.
Yeah,
or
let's
you want to do that?
Yeah, because I think it's appropriate. For
I think
this conversation.
on the heels of that question, it absolutely is.
Okay, back. So, on the heels of my GT car question, here's a GT car. What is this?
So this is an exercise, and again, both
You
of
can
these
readjust your
models-
mic there, sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Get a little closer.
Let me know when I'm good.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So both of these models are really, these are just examples of what's possible. The designs are canned. Like, we could build these cars exactly as they are. There's no problem with that. But really the idea is to stoke the imagination about what's possible and really bring people out of this notion that what we do has to look like something else that's already out there. So this is a statement of like the ultimate luxury car, right? What would, if you wanted to have
Thank you, Tim.
the longest looking sort of sled with a look at the windshield on this. I mean, the proportions of the windshield are absolutely bananas.
Is that a 4-to-1 in terms of a door to window?
So this one is, and that's a concept car kind of ratio that doesn't usually make it through the engineering requirements
Every
of mass
American
production.
concept car uses the ratio. Like all Astons are the rule of thirds, right? Every Aston Martin.
Thirds is super
Well, speaking
big.
of a group stoking this big saloon space,
Yeah.
their recent Lagonda
yeah,
concept
there you go.
is provoking a lot of discussion right now.
Middle East only for that thing, right?
Yeah.
What is it? How come you guys think, because you've done concept cars for American companies that were bold and exciting, only to have them fizzle and go nowhere. Why do you think the American companies won't, especially considering the success of the Chrysler 300, like, why won't Lincoln make a Continental that looks like a 64 suicide door Continental? Why won't, you know what I mean? Why won't you take them? Why won't Cadillac make this basically?
Yeah.
You know?
And by the way, they've done some concept cars that look like this.
the
The
Sienna,
Mirage, the Sienna, and the Mirage, stunning automobiles.
Yeah.
And
Buick had a real nice long nose concept, like what? But then they just bail. Why did they bail?
I think there's elements of risk there, right? And as we were talking about the Dodge Viper concept earlier, that is a big bet, and that's a difficult thing for a large organization to make.
Do you think they won that bet? In the grand scheme of now what we know about the life cycle of the Viper 92 to 17, I think they won that bet.
I think so.
I think they won.
I think so.
All the way. I think not only did they win the bet, but they won the bet for everyone else.
Did they win
because
Le Mans?
out of that,
They won Le Mans a Viper a couple years, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Some of the race spec versions.
Yeah.
I think what would be the Gen 2 car.
Gen 2 car, the ACR
Yep.
that they did, right? They won some stuff, some big stuff with that.
But yeah, I
vehicle.
guess they did really kind of kick the excitement door open.
100%. Think about where we were at the time, and you're a Corvette guy, so I can say this to you. But C4 Corvette came back, right?
Yeah.
In
Well, when the
1984.
C5 was out, that was like wow.
Yeah, but before the Corvette was gone for a couple of years. I mean, people may forget that there was a time when there was no Corvette, and so then when it came back,
83, 84, right?
yeah,
Or 82, 83.
82. I think it was even late 81, but for sure.
There's no 83.
There's
83
no
is the
83.
year off.
There's no
yeah.
83.
There's one.
So,
it's the museum, right? It's the only. It's like a white. It's like the only 83 Corvette. I think it's at the museum.
That could be true.
It was a C4.
Yeah.
There's a great story called the title is All Corvettes,
All Corvettes Are Red.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Wonderful story
Great
about
book.
where everything was at. So the Viper was part of bridging that and really bringing that passion back out of the 80s. Think of the cars we had, Mustang 2 and K
Trash.
cars,
Yeah.
garbage. I honestly wanted to change careers at that time. I was thinking about how do I just bail out of this whole idea. I love automobiles since the time I'm 7. I'm building my own bicycles and everything, and that's
it was
a little
stagnant
bit of my backstory.
even in Europe, right? So
Yeah.
Mercedes, the SL
Rolled
went
over.
from 74 to 87.
Yeah.
The D series or the 300 series went from 70 whatever
It was
to
a
then
dry period for a lot of people.
How long did the E30 last? Right?
Yeah.
The
Good example.
911, 74 to 90 to 89. It's like fuck me. All these products from Europe with these insanely long product cycles.
Yeah.
You
They
know?
just didn't want to touch it. It was kind of like, just leave it alone. If it ain't broke, just
Right.
leave it alone.
Right.
Nobody's interested in where this is going. By the way, one of the other fallouts from that was that the convertible went away for a while. There were very, very few convertible models.
domestically, yep,
Domestically. Corvette was one of them. And by the way, some of the talk about that was the risk, that the liability of having this soft top kind of rollover problem and everything that was going on at the time. Most domestic automotive companies did not offer a convertible.
It was like the overlap of lawsuits and pre-safety features.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Exactly right. So the Viper again was an open top car.
Yeah.
Right? It brought that back. I don't think the Viper
fact that
gets
they
enough
didn't
credit for it.
Well,
So
with
I'm
the
a Viper
soft
guy.
windows and shit, and they sold that like that. Wow.
How did they get away with it, right?
I don't know.
But think about it. It was a big, badass American muscle car, man. It harkened back to all the days when we could just stick our foot in it and make smoke.
Do you?
And none of those cars were around in the 80s.
Do you like driving your first gen Viper?
I do. It's interesting. I like to. It's a car I like to look at a lot, but I do get it out of the garage. It gets probably a couple thousand miles under the year. The Gen 2 hardtop gets probably more daily use.
It's
But
a GTS, I imagine.
Yeah. But the red Gen 1 is just a conversation every single time.
Does it have like those original 3-spoke wheels? And is it really?
It's got
that?
the 3 spokes. It's
Wow.
the real deal.
It's
It's
the real
untouched.
92.
Yeah, it's an untouched Gen 1.
Wow. There's a guy in this neighborhood who I see a lot who has the most beat 92 Viper you have ever seen.
Hopefully he's got 100,000 miles
There's
on it.
like
I'd be
no
jealous.
leather left on it.
Yeah.
Like it's just like foam on the seat. It's so fucked, and I see him driving it all the time. It's great. It's
That's super cool, actually. I mean, the car wasn't a super great in terms of durability. I mean, but
as
in
an
terms of
attitude
design,
statement.
attitude,
Yeah.
attitude. It was the FU car of its day in every way.
Yeah, they definitely won on that. Going back to where we started with this whole thing, they definitely won the impressions there. And wrapping it up with the Gen 5, that's just another car that was quite spectacular.
Yeah, have you driven a new one? The
yeah,
newest
the Gen
ones?
5. Yeah,
They're lovely.
Yeah, that's really, really nice.
Yeah, they finally figured out how to make them really nice, and they charged just a little too much money, and they shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
When the TA came down to like 95 grand, it was like, oh, there
Sign
it is.
me up,
Buy
yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, like, what other crazy concept cars have you guys had your little grubby fingers in?
There's just a slew of those. There was it's just going back to stoking the imagination and what's possible. Darren and I think the final thing years ago that we touched was it was a Lincoln Mark X concept.
Huh.
So, and that's where I was introduced to this company called Valmet that happened to end up.
Wait, I've heard of Valmet. Who's Valmet? Who
They
is
ended
that?
up being contracted to build this Fisker Karma.
Oh yeah.
But Valmet was an extraordinary organization that we collaborated with at
is
another.
that it right there in the top?
Yeah,
That's the concept, right? I
the
remember
Mark
that.
10. So this is
Look at that.
It was interesting because
Yeah.
here's this hardtop retractable. This very and what the reason I bring the Mark 10 up and it's hardtop retractable is say what the design good, bad, and different, but this car is fully functional and the retractable hardtop was robust. It was cycled thousands of times, which you can't do with most concept cars. And that kind of sort of fits the ethos of what we're doing with Unicus is fully functional cars that you can go out and use.
It's interesting. I wonder Ford or Lincoln never came out with any retractable hardtop of any kind, have they?
Not since
Volvo C70.
C70.
Under Ford.
The C70 was an amazing,
Premier Automotive Group
engineering exercise.
The
to
roof
this
on
day,
the
the roof.
Wow, look at that. Was that it, huh?
Yep.
There's your roof mechanism going.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I always wondered what it was like to engineer the folding of that type of mechanism.
So we've done some of that in the concept car world. I actually was one of my very early project I was on at Metal Crafters was a car called the Copperhead.
I remember
which was
the
going to be the little
Copperhead.
brother to the Viper.
Yeah,
You remember
Chrysler
the
Copperhead. Yeah, I remember that.
Again, super pure design. It was all about wheels forward and all kinds of great, really exciting proportions. But I was the engineer that.
Look, there it is.
Yeah,
it's fucking
baby.
good looking too.
Yep. That's a great looking
terrible
car.
picture. That's going to be the lowest res ever. Oh, it's not that bad.
Not too bad, but look
Not
at
a bad looking car, actually.
So all of this came out of this Viper design idea. If you think of the forearm, the human forearm, where the muscles kind of undulate under and over each other, that's
Right.
where the side body of the Viper came from.
Inspired by juice heads in the gym.
Exactly right.
This
And
one's inspired by hammer curls.
Yeah, and that Copperhead was right there. By the way, the tire had snakeskin tread pattern, and they went over the top. They
I
absolutely.
like when they do that. I like when they cut the fun patterns into the tire.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
always
That's
a good,
super cool.
That's a good one.
And that's technology that we have access to in the process that we do.
What
So
did that have for an engine? Was it a little 6?
Yeah, it was a little 6. So again, falling. Believe it or not, it was kind of on the heels of the Prowler as
Prowler,
well.
right.
And there was still
I
all
feel
this
bad
guilty
because-
pleasure of the V8. It was still that kind of wasn't really where the world was.
But that 6 that like the 300M got was not a terrible 6.
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah.
in a fucking Prowler. Like, please, bitch.
Well,
And it sounded so terrible. It had those
it
trumpets.
did sound terrible.
Yeah.
It sounded horrible. It did not serve the purpose at all.
really had some trumpets.
But to Nate's point, and he touched on it slightly, it was really an engineering exercise more than anything in partnership with Alcoa, right? I mean, the idea was this was bridging over this idea of bringing aluminum into manufacturing in a bigger way.
Was that really a pioneering car for aluminum?
Not for the industry, but for a domestic.
Yeah.
To bring
For a chassis.
whatever that was, 10,000 plus cars that were constructed.
Yeah.
that was definitely an engineering and a manufacturing exercise for them.
Yeah.
See a
absolutely.
long-term collector play in those in Prowlers? What do you think?
I think there's maybe way down the road. There's just so many pristine ones sitting in your grandfather's garage.
I know. They were never driven.
They stored them right away.
Yeah, and you just wonder,
Yeah.
like, who is the younger person that is going to go, well, that's what I want, especially if you sit in one, because, God, the interior, what a hunk of shit.
It was a packaging nightmare,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
And
I mean,
we actually at Metal Crafters we did an accessory package for this car where we made a hard top and a couple of other features for it.
Did you make the trailers? Tell me you
We
made the
did.
fucking trailers.
We did.
I
Listen,
love the trailers.
We not only made trailers, we made a special car for Kiss. We made the Kiss Prowler. Pull up the Kiss
God,
Prowler.
I don't even want to know.
It was so Kiss was
the
on
last
tour
thing
at the time.
this car needs is Gene Simmons' fucking influence.
There it is. You see it together with the trailer.
God.
So not only did
Holy
we,
shit, it's so
the
ugly.
black one up
I'm
there.
sorry.
It was
Oh,
a
thank
car
God
that,
it's not that.
we made. There it is. So you see, it had
Oh.
a stereo in the trailer, and it
The
had
trailer
our.
was just a stereo you would tell.
Yeah,
I see guys
that's
on the
all it
bike
was.
path with trailers.
Well, we're talking V6, man.
Did you cut holes in the hood too?
We did all of that. So that was a specially designed Prowler for
hilarious.
the Kiss rock group. And I actually came into my office one day and Gene Simmons was sitting at my chair. And I'm like, wow, the God of Thunder's here.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do? But anyway, but this was a giveaway. They raffled the car
is
off
so
on
funny.
their tour that year.
Do you guys do that kind of work as well? I think Metal Crafters used to do like extend a Lambo for Shaq.
for
Oh,
Shaquille
you
O'Neal
did
and-
that? The
We were there
extended
for that.
wheelbase?
We were there in those days
Did
as
you
well.
really?
Yeah,
The
there's
stretch Gallardos and the stretch 360s?
not something we're looking to particularly do at
Well, look,
Unicus.
if you happen to
but-
be extremely fucking loaded and you want a hypercar made for you and you're 6'7",
There you go.
Here's the real, and here's the opportunity there, is that we will involve professional automotive designers to do it right.
Yep.
We'll get the proportions right. We're going to actually, we're going to do some clay. We're going to make something that looks apart. It's not going to look like something that a limousine company built.
Well, I think that's an interesting point because if you look at where a lot of automotive design, certainly there's a sketch, but then soon after that sort of initial emotional or visceral sketch, there is a packaging exercise. So for the the 6'10" professional athlete, the car could really start immediately being packaged around him.
That's what I'm saying.
As
Yeah,
opposed
yeah.
to trying to stretch or pull or do something
Yeah.
to make it work for them.
yeah, you could base an entire chassis around
Absolutely.
a guy having 40-inch legs.
Absolutely.
You know?
Bingo.
What happens when you guys get to the interior? We haven't really talked about that much. I mean, interiors are very difficult.
Well, that's where the professional automotive talent comes in.
Yeah.
And in Southern California, there are just it's just one of the hottest beds of designers in the whole art spectrum, but so many automotive designers in Southern California, being able to tap into what we have right in our backyard is a big part of the program.
Do you find with a concept car, okay, yeah, it's got to look good and look realistic enough, and it's got to be able to drive at least to a certain degree, but do you find that the interiors are never really interacted with, and you're never really expecting, you want it to look future-y, but you don't expect it to last 300 cycles of getting your fat ass in and out of it or whatever.
Right.
So how do you durability test something like that?
Well, I mean, if it's down to materials, that's no different than working with a hide manufacturer or somebody like that, of making sure that we select something depending on how exotic that the owner driving the process wants to go. But certainly you can select materials or finish materials to support the durability you're talking about.
And all of them will be OEM grade materials. I mean, one thing about the automotive industry that they were forced to recognize and really deal with because of all of the foreign competition is that automobiles are expected to last in the snow and in the ice and in the sun and all of those things. And so the grade of the materials that they're using is very, very high now.
Yeah.
And so these are automotive materials. We're buying our materials from the same suppliers.
Yep.
How do you? But I find beyond materials, I find that in general, if I look at even very high end sort of one-off cars done by most shops, even if a lot of time is spent making custom gauges and custom dashboards and blah 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 blah, they just can't quite get to that last little level that the OEM does. And you guys are going to charge a lot of money. How are you going to get that last bit of excellence out of it?
So that a lot of that sort of final polish is because of the professional automotive designer that's involved with the process, and with sort of all gauges being digital and being able to have sort of three-dimensional or a lot of depth in the gauges, that is at the handiwork of a very, very good designer. So digitizing what they come up with is a lot more feasible than what you think.
What about powertrains? I mean, like if you go, okay, well, everything's on the table. I mean, is it, where do you decide what?
So, just in terms of what you were just talking about, in terms of durability, reliability, modern automotive engines are people take for granted how unbelievably reliable a modern engine is. We start the car every time they fire up and they run, right?
I just had a station wagon for a week that it makes 600 horsepower.
Right? But you can still
awesome
drive
is that?
it. You can still drive it to the grocery store and turn it off and on 10 times in a day, right?
100%.
So all of that is in a modern engine. I mean, they spend literally hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars developing these engines. I'm not a fan of myself. Now, I obviously this is a customer-driven service, but I think the engines are great. You just buy them. They're ready to go, right? Because if you're living in Saudi Arabia or Alaska, you want all of those hundreds of millions of dollars of durability testing and validation that the OEMs did to make those engines that reliable.
Right, but for this much money, you want it to be sufficiently exotic.
Sure.
Right? You can't. I mean,
but you can kind of get away with it,
use
right?
LS7s, right? Let's just,
Probably wouldn't start there, but fantastic motor, but probably wouldn't start there.
Yeah, but not at the price point you guys are talking about.
Yeah,
You guys are
absolutely.
talking about it needs to be something a little more interesting than that, right?
Yeah, so there's a number of specialty suppliers out there that you can work with to potentially massage that to this exotic level.
Like a Cosworth.
Perfect example.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
The Cosworth. There's a number of other folks around the
Matt
globe.
Williams is working with Singer. How about
perfect
that?
example.
That's
Yep.
pretty
By
cool.
the way, Mercury Marine is selling crate motors,
Dude,
right?
have you seen
So,
them things?
Yeah.
They're beasts.
Yeah, they're doing-
1,400 horsepower for a
Yeah.
daily driven
Yep.
motor. So
Yep. So that's a good domestic example of something that's going to be dead reliable.
Yeah, dude, is Mercury using dual overhead cam heads on those LS-based engines, and that's the deal?
There is a lower, I want to say a medium tier variant of where they are heavily reworking that architecture with a 4-cam setup. That's pretty impressive.
Probably badass.
It's a pretty amazing, normally aspirated motor.
Yeah.
and reliable. That's kind of the
Reliable is your thing.
Well, I tell you why reliability is my thing. I grew up building a lot of different custom cars, street cars always. I got into the concept car later in my life, and this is kind of part of the whole backstory of Unicus. And there was nothing more irritating for me than having to get under the hood of my custom bitchin' looking street car and deal with wiring problems and, starter motors and batteries going dead and all of those things that we dealt with. And even today, guys that build, high-end street rods deal with this really low level of reliability. And I'm just about reliability. I can't tolerate that myself, and I can't see at this price point expecting a customer to deal with it as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I think that's where you kind of on that same thread, you can start to look at the very high-end electric drivetrain, and from whether it's something I would say off the shelf, like you can talk to the folks at Rimac.
Yeah.
Right. They're offering powertrains
Yeah.
and a variety of different solutions. Those things we see as part of the tool set that we can bake into a customer's vehicle.
I was just up in San Francisco last weekend, and I met these guys who have something called the Teslonda.
Oh, my
Pull up my
goodness.
Instagram, Tim. The Teslonda is a 1981 Honda sedan with
gosh.
right there in the middle with a Tesla.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness!
Wait, just that's a video. It's a quick video of this thing getting out of the hole. And they couldn't fit the Tesla battery pack. They just have a volt pack. But watch this. This thing. That was just not in a parking lot. This thing runs an 8-second quarter mile. Wow. It's 2,400 pounds, and it's dead silent, and it has a Tesla drivetrain in an 81 Honda.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we're at the early stages of all the sort of tuning on the electrification side, and you're seeing specialty suppliers moving down that path.
Yeah. Do you see the future in hot rodding with electric?
Absolutely.
Do you see it?
All motorsports are going to be.
Do you
going
see
electric.
with your customers, though, if you start talking to your customers about building some custom thing that's electric, do they see it as a cop-out? Because if I was a customer, I would go, electric, but that's like so easy. Like,
Just plug it in, right?
yeah, well, it
It's
kind
a
of
motor and a battery.
Well, sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is oversimplifying it, but like that's
Definitely.
kind of what it is.
You say it's oversimplifying it, but we took a bit of a detour in the human history to move away from electric cars. Were around in the turn of the century, as we all know, and the level of complexity is so much lower than in modern internal combustion engines, as we also know. We love the sound of internal combustion engines because of what they represent and how fast they become and all of those things. But the ultimate solution is going to be the electric motor. It's going to win because you're going to get under 2 second 0 to 60 time. We already are. And what's more exciting than speed? Speed is the
And I think for
ultimate
certain,
win.
we got
Running out of electricity in the canyons is more exciting to me than speed.
but for certain, I think there's still going to be a lot of gravity around the internal combustion for the type of car that we're bringing to the table.
Because
But
you're
this
talking
big
about an
four-
emotional experience, especially the supercars. Nobody wants. The only reason those fucking other cars have the hypercars have the hybrid shit is for the London tax.
Yeah, sure.
We all know this. This is not a secret anywhere.
Yep.
Ferrari did not want to put a hybrid system in there.
They still don't want to.
No, but their customers save $100,000 a year, or whatever it is, in the stupid London tax.
Yeah, right. But if Elon Musk brings a car to the table that's a sub 2 second car, all electric.
I know.
You know, so
but for certain, I think certain customers, we got this big 4-door car in front of us here.
Yeah.
That person might start to have expectations that it's 1,000 horsepower, all-wheel drive electric vehicle. If you see what Aston Martin's doing with the Rapide, that I think that's going to be spectacular. An electrified Rapide. So
it's a car that's longer. But has no more room.
Understood.
There's no extra room.
Right. Yeah. Understood. Understood. But there's something as fantastic as an Aston is with a V12. Had a chance to experience that car all electric, and it's
electric Rapide.
Yeah.
And is it
one of the
lovely?
prototype. It's fantastic.
Is it like Tesla fast?
It is. Yeah. And it has this thing essentially feeling. It's like, wow, this really fits with what this 4-door car is all about.
Oh, look at the fun graphics they've put on it too. The graphics say, "I care about the environment, but not so much that I'm giving up my Aston Martin." Wow, they really did that digital fucking air thing, didn't they? Are they demonstrating the airflow of a Vornado fan on the side of that?
Not quite sure, to be honest.
I bet you it's good. I'd like to see an electric Phantom. I think an electric Phantom would be extremely appropriate.
And that's why I'm bringing
100%.
that
right?
up. Yeah.
No, for this luxury car, I think that could.
It's a good fit.
Yeah, because who gives a shit if it weighs 6,000 pounds?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
This
is
you
about
can
making
get
a
right around
statement.
that.
Yeah.
This is a statement car.
And
this
that
is how
statement might be this sort of clean transportation. This is what they want to show up to an event silently and being pushed along by 2,000 foot-pounds of torque at the end of the day.
I'd like to see you do, like, the company that's doing the new Stratos. I'd like to see you take that formula and make me from scratch a new 80s Lagonda, Aston Martin Lagonda.
Nate and I had that exact conversation last week. Nate, did we not talk about that?
How often do you want to buy a Lagonda
every day?
Fucking make it awesome?
Every day.
Right?
Yep.
Lagonda,
it's
we had this exact
we
conversation.
kind of went off about it. It took a half hour of our lives we won't get back, but it was awesome.
Yeah.
Look at pull up the new one, top left, Tim. So Aston came out with this, which is a sort of very low production. How many are they making of these, Nate? Do you remember?
I think there was
Not
100
a
or
lot,
less.
maybe 100. Middle East only, right?
right.
Yeah, it wasn't
Absolutely.
homologated in very many countries.
And it's it's cool.
It's decent.
It's cool, but
decent.
it's not the Lagonda I want.
Nope.
The Lagonda I want is a hard hitting motherfucker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's chopped.
Sure.
Chopped, and just the proportions
big
are
rear
just
rake.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
look at that.
Look at that thing.
That's the
how did
one-
that even happen? That is so amazing. That is amazing. But that's exactly. But Matt, come on down. We're ready to build that
Oh
car
my
for
God.
you because
How
that's
much would
missing.
that? If I told you that's what I wanted, and it needed to have, I don't know, an Aston engine, maybe the new V8 out of the DB11 V8, maybe, which is actually an AMG engine, but whatever. Maybe V8 automatic, make it nice. What are we talking? Millions, right?
Well, so the price is very much a function of the design, 100%.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, here's why it's millions. And when I say millions, I don't know that it's 2 or 5. We don't know where the exact number lands. But it's all about what we said about a windshield.
Yeah,
It
right.
costs $100,000 to make a one-off windshield.
yeah.
So by the time you multiply that times 1,000 parts on the car, somebody's got to do all that engineering and make all that tooling.
And it's that price is being reflected in the specialty vehicle sort of divisions. We were talking about the $10 million Rolls Royce.
Yeah,
right. That's just
Eric Clapton's ugly ass Ferrari was like $3 million.
There's a lot of labor,
and I think that's for me that's a swing and a miss. But if we did the Lagonda the right way, and if you don't build that car, Matt, I'm going to.
Oh, I don't have. I
don't either.
Would love, but I
think
can't.
that's the car. I think
Someone's gonna do it and kill it and fucking
kill it.
and nail it. I hope they did it. I just saw where was it? Geneva Motor Show. Jaguar did something. Do you see that? Jaguar updated a. They did like a singerized almost Jaguar. Who was it? It was for a metal musician from Slayer. The guy from
that's
Slayer.
right. That's right. It was an
Slayer
80s
singer.
Jag that they completely brought back. Yeah.
Where the fuck was it? No, that's not it. Is that it? No.
Probably if you search
from
Jaguar
Geneva Motor
Geneva
Show.
2018.
Yeah, Geneva Motor Show. It really.
That's right. It was for a musician.
Looked very
belief.
good.
Yep.
From Slayer, right? It was a metalhead guy.
I don't remember
There it is.
the customer.
On the top row. Middle. Yep, that's it. And they did the wire wheels at the right side. They flared out the fenders a bit. New motor. Make it nice.
My
you know,
goodness.
they took all the right shit and made it the right way. Yeah.
And that kind of that's what you're seeing, I think, at a lot of OEMs of like paying respect to some of their heritage, bringing things back, finding customers that are willing to pay for this level of craftsmanship.
Yeah.
And that's why we're sitting here.
I want the Lagonda
And make it reliable.
but more exaggerated. Really exaggerated.
Yeah, we can do it.
We're ready.
We can
We're
do
ready.
it.
Now, come on down.
That's crazy. So like, you know, has people asked you to make things that are not possible?
Well, that's actually another really great question, Matt. You're super good at this, so I'm happy.
Well, I'm
really
interested in
excited to
this
be
hugely. This is hilarious. This is very interesting to me.
Here's really kind of where I see my own personal history in this journey, because especially at Metal Crafters, is it wasn't about making something that was productionizable. Like, how do we make this at the right price point? It was make it pure to the design. Right? Yeah. So the idea was to make the engineering work around the design and not vice versa.
Definitely design-driven exercise.
Did it again there. Yeah, and that's exactly what this will be. This will be about how to make it beautiful first and then make the engineering work. And we've been doing that our whole lives with all kinds of crazy door swings and kinematics to accommodate getting in and out of the car and making the car functional in order, like this GTSR.
What's your favorite door swing?
Ooh.
Right now?
It's got to be Koenigsegg, right? Dihedral. No one's doing it like that.
Dihedral is
That's
bananas.
definitely one of the best.
But here's the thing. I'm an engineer, right? By classic training. And so this door swing that you're looking at on this model is a study in exactly that. What is the best door swing? And here's the thing about doors is doors are in the way. Right? When you open a door, no matter where you're at, if you're in a parking lot or wherever you are, this thing swings out into the...
Unless you're in a Z1. Or a Kaiser Darren.
Or a Kaiser Darren.
That's true, yeah.
So there you go. Those are great solutions, and that's what we're saying we would want to explore with this kind of exercise as well. How do you get the door to be totally functional, look cool? It's still got to look cool as hell, because doors are doors, right? We all watch Silicon Valley, and it's, doors are part of the experience now. But some of the doors that are out there now are actually worse than a standard door, because they are actually more in the way of what a human needs to do to contort themselves inside of an automobile.
Well, certainly in the supercar genre as well. Although they're getting better.
They're getting better.
The old Ford GT was the worst offender.
Horrible, right?
Yeah.
And even the original, if you go back even further, the original Mercedes Gullwing, I mean, really,
they had the steering wheel. The folding
steering wheel. But you hit your head on the door getting in and out of that
And
thing.
I had a DeLorean, which if you could have built the structure of the car correctly to work with the design, would have been great. I mean, you could park very close.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's helping out door design is that we're moving the sills in, right?
Yeah.
Those are getting narrowed up, so you're not stepping over a 12-inch wide sill.
And a carbon tub means you don't need the roof structure of the door as much, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
And you guys can make carbon tubs, right?
100%. Absolutely.
That's so cool.
By the way, one of the gentlemen.
What else can you make?
Well, anything you can dream.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing was, that the automotive space doesn't, I think, as we're talking about, get enough respect for us, because you have so many subsystems that you have to make work.
Yeah.
It's
seamlessly.
It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, they have to be
hell
in
of
the
a challenge.
background of actually getting in and out of the car and driving it.
Yeah.
But one of our team members is a guy that came from some of the earliest days of pre-preg carbon fiber with Dan Gurney back in all of his days in GTP and IndyCar both. He's since gone on to enter the aerospace world, I mean, and we actually invented the carbon. We completely spec'd the carbon fiber process at Metal Crafters in the 90s. So we've been doing all of this stuff for more than 20 years, and we can make anything out of carbon fiber. It's really an amazing engineering material that way.
Anyone asked you to build a race car?
Well, I don't know how much Nate can talk about what he's doing, and you mentioned a lot of the electrification that's going on, but he's actually very heavily involved with some very deep conversations around.
Oh, Pikes Peak, huh?
Yeah, there's some Pikes Peak stuff.
that didn't take long to connect those dots.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was some time at Faraday where we were talking about bringing the FF01 to life. That would have been cool to see that happen in the special projects division that I was running at the time. But what Darren's hinting at is looking at electric rallycross, and that's one of my day jobs.
That could be fun.
Is the electrification of rallycross, and that's
There's short races, right?
Yeah, so I think it's that's a sort of another sort of interesting engineering exercise that's on the horizon.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what doesn't work about Formula E. That whole stopping and changing cars thing is extraordinarily shitty. But a rallycross race is like 8 minutes long.
It's perfectly tuned to short attention spans,
Yeah.
right? 8-10 minutes. You can put a lot of power down in a short amount of time, and then turn that around in heat type races, so sort of supercross style.
Yeah, quick change battery packs sort of stuff.
Yep, or even start to demonstrate, really high voltage DC fast charge, which Porsche's talking about, and some other people.
Yeah, that's the Mission E charge in 10 minutes kind of thing, right?
Yep. So bumping the voltage way up into 800-900 volts creates some interesting opportunities there, and all that sort of technology all flows right into Unicus, and I'm flowing it back into some other places as well.
By the way, Nate has his fingers in Formula E also.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Well, at
It's not
Faraday,
your fault the races suck, but they do.
He doesn't own the series. He doesn't own the series.
No. But when I was at Faraday, we had a Formula E team, and we were collaborating with Jay Penske, and we're doing some interesting things there. So that was good.
Is Faraday alive right now? Excuse me for asking.
Yeah,
but
I think
Fair question in Southern California.
What's the date? It's the 27th.
Yeah, exactly. Check the calendar.
Yeah, it seems that they may have turned a corner. I don't exactly know, but by the looks of their social feeds, they are readying those
factory.
those pre-production concepts and trying to bring it to life. So that was my year and a half or so in
I'd
Formula
like to
E.
see them succeed.
We'll see.
I'd like to see everybody succeed.
I'd like to see
question.
everybody, and I'm glad you said that as well, because we are very much entrenched here in Southern California, and there's a lot of amazing R&D and development going on in Southern California. It would be great if they all succeed.
Yeah.
We all get better. Rising tide raises all boats, and we all can learn from each other and continue to drive this technology forward. There's a lot of great stuff going on here.
Yeah, Faraday had a whole market it first and build something later philosophy. I'm not entirely sure I can go along with, but ultimately I'd like to see them have a car we can drive. You know?
Yeah.
Why
so-
not? Let's get another one out there in the mix.
Yeah,
For
sure. There's an interesting opportunity, and certainly there's one hell of a drivetrain underneath that car.
Is it?
There is
underneath there? That's some shit.
There
It's
is
legit.
a legit,
It's legit.
1,000 horsepower electric drivetrain. What Pete Savaggi and his team is doing there is some really, really good stuff.
The Lucid Air concept was extremely fast as well. Didn't they do like 200 plus miles an hour in the thing?
Yeah. That's another great sort of demonstration of what is possible with EV technology.
Well, what an interesting business you guys are in. I mean, how hard do you have to work to sell something like this to somebody? I mean,
there's a lot of work. This is a small group of people that can fund a project like this and have the passion to fund a project like this. They may put $20 million in a house on Back Bay in Newport or somewhere down there, or we might have a customer in the Mediterranean that's putting $100 million or $200 million in a yacht. Getting them to channel that passion into an automotive project. That's a small group of people, but we think that there's an audience out there for this product.
It's extremely interesting. I wonder, does this customer, are they worried about, well, if I spend $5 million developing my own driving concept car, is that an investment, or are we just playing? I would think that they're playing at that point.
Sure,
but
we think that they're playing. I certainly wouldn't want to make any kind of claims about what this looks like as an investment.
Right.
I often cite the example of Menlechenkov. He built an unbelievable yacht, right? That looks like a submarine. If you know Menlechenkov's Russian
Can
billionaire.
we find this, please?
Okay, yeah, look up Menlechenkov. It's called A. It simply has named
Yacht A.
after the letter.
Yacht A. Oh, yeah.
Right?
We know Yacht A. And then there's Sailing Yacht A as well.
Absolutely.
Yep,
Motor
right?
Yacht A and Sailing Yacht.
Absolutely.
These fucking boats are crazy.
They're beyond crazy, and they're hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're not worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but that's what they cost to build.
Yeah.
So that's just somebody, if you want to have
Just
the
look
biggest...
up Yacht A, Tim. You'll find it in quotes.
Yeah. It's
So it's that same sort of customer set.
Yeah.
There you
Look
go.
at that. So there's Sailing Yacht A,
Sailing Yacht
and then
A
Motor
and
Yacht
Motor
A.
Yacht A.
And they don't look like things that are of this world.
Absolutely not. And that was the idea going in. They were designed very specifically by one of the world's most exclusive yacht designers.
So ridiculous.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that last year in Monaco when I was at the Formula E race, and it's just like you see in pictures
on everything.
Yeah, and when you see it sitting
100%.
offshore, you're just like, you still can't believe that that's real.
It's the biggest middle finger on the ocean.
The motor yacht A was here. It was here, and it can't fit in Marina del Rey, and so it anchored off of the Venice Pier.
No kidding.
Yeah, which I was seeing it there. I was bugging out when I saw it there. It's the Russian standard vodka guy, right?
That's what it is.
It's Abramovich,
so,
right? Yeah.
Multi. By the way, the motor yacht A is for sale already because he already has another project in the pipe.
What do they want for it?
Half what he paid to build it. I hear it's going for like $250 million.
Only.
Yeah, see,
Today only.
Today only. But I mean, it's so hard for us to envision this world where you're a billionaire and you can buy anything that's for sale on planet Earth. So. But you can't.
Like I said, too many rich people.
Too many rich people. The wealth in this world is phenomenal. There's a lot of very wealthy people. So if you want to have that yacht, maybe you want to have this
matching car that looks like a submarine tender.
Yeah, and it's not an investment. It's about the experience.
Yeah, that's the key word.
Yeah,
this bringing that sort of OEM development experience to somebody is just that. It is an experience that we think people are willing to pay for.
Do you think they have that like depression that sets in once they take delivery and the experience of building it is over?
Like it's hard to say. I could imagine that being true because I have that experience with everything I buy in my life.
Yeah.
So,
well, look, I got to tell you guys out there, if you have escalated to the point where LaFerraris and shit are too common for you, boy, do I have somewhere for you to blow $5 million. Wow, that was a really interesting conversation, guys. I'm so glad you came and joined us today. And I'm sorry about the miscommunication last time.
No sweat
but
whatsoever,
damn, I got to tell you, look, when you guys have something to drive, I need to come down and even if it's like some black development mule that has no body on it, whatever it is. I just want like a 5-minute go.
Yeah, I want to add this one little thing too, which because you brought it up. By the way, we're located directly across the street from DeLorean Motor Cars Incorporated.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
From Cameron?
Yeah, you know Cameron?
Well, they restored my car. My car was the first car they restored when they opened up.
No kidding.
So there you go.
Yeah.
That's where we're located.
I have since sold it, but yeah, in Huntington.
In Huntington Beach.
Oh, perfect.
So we look out the window and there's 30 or 40 DeLoreans sitting on the street on every
conversations I've had with them guys about how they find the keys for the right car and remove the fuck because they don't have clickers, right? It's all manual locks.
No, man.
All the keys are the same. It's the silver one.
Yeah.
Really? Is it?
Oh, the silver one. Got it. Yeah.
They have a board inside that has all the spaces mapped out.
Oh my
and they
God!
hang the
there
keys
you go.
everywhere that they can put a car.
Cameron's a great guy. Cameron's a
crazy.
great guy.
The Wynn family they're spectacular.
They are spectacular.
I mean, if they were hypothetically talking about building a new DeLorean, I wonder where they might go for help with that.
You never know.
Considering you guys are directly across the fucking street.
No comment.
Yeah, you can laser scan without even getting out of your chairs.
Yeah.
Darren and Nate from Unicus Cars, UNICUS. We can't really plug anything because they don't really have a public web presence, but if someone were interested in talking about a project, where would they go?
So at a minimum, they can certainly get to the web page. I mean, they'll have to have a password to get on there. But the best thing to do really is just to call me directly.
Don't give out your phone number. I see info@unicuscars.com. We will work with that. Info@unicuscars.com.
That's the best way. That'll get an email into us, and we check that frequently because there's a lot of other projects going on that are. By the way, this is not all we do, right? This is kind of like the bread and butter. This is the cream of the crop, the pinnacle of what we do.
I figured. People still make concept cars.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We do all kinds of engineering development. So
extremely cool.
When the right customer comes along, we're ready to do this as well.
Well, this is a neat project, so I hope you find all the customers for the craziest shit. Thanks.
And you can come down and drive it. We'll make sure that's in the contract.
Car A. Yeah, this could be Car A, right? A little work, a turret maybe, and this could be Car A.
Yeah.
All right.
Totally possible.
Thank you, boys. The Smoking Tire Podcast is, as always, powered by Shout Engine. Get your own damn podcast at shoutengine.com. All you need is something to say, something to pick it up, and the internet to broadcast. I really fumbled that line at the end. Fuck it. I'm out. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks.